Being a good NEN user is much like a good marriage, a constant balancing act requiring a large aura investment and a perpetual fear of the abilities of your spouse/opponent. But then again, when it comes to NEN, just being good isn't quite good enough. No, we need to find the best. Hello and welcome to the NewWorldReview, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we are going to embark on some sort of grand journey to discover the 20 best NEN users in Hunter x Hunter. Not at all an easy thing to discover actually, due to the highly subjective and situational nature of NEN use. So instead of doing my regular thing and just, stating a blunt opinion, I've actually constructed a very special methodology to discover our NEN champions. A process that involved me analyzing 119 NEN wielders within Hunter x Hunter, and quite frankly, it took me a pretty disgusting amount of time to complete, so please do justify my life choices by subscribing to the NewWorldReview, which will also result in regular Hunter x Hunter content being uploaded straight into your YouTube feeds. Now, I understand that not everyone is going to be interested in the methodology, and if you do want to get straight into the list, then you can simply skip to this time. However, I would encourage you to stay because it's very important to understand our ranking criteria, and if you do get bored, then we'll have a slideshow of Hunter x Hunter ladies playing in the bottom corner here just to keep your attention. So you keep your eyes there whilst the adults talk. Essentially though, every NEN user was ranked according to 4 categories. In each of these 4, the user was assigned a score out of 25, and then the 4 categories were added together to achieve a final score out of 100. The first category being aura. This is designed to measure the sheer quantity of aura that a NEN user has access to, and this is obviously important because the more aura one has, the more fuel they have for NEN use. And the scale I've used for this comes courtesy of Knuckle, who measured Gon, Moral, and Yuppie, giving us quantifiable aura units. However, with that said, most NEN users in Hunter x Hunter would actually rank below Gon in terms of aura quantity, so I used him as something of a halfway mark for measure. Very few people have been able to reach Moral's aura quantity, and even less so Yuppie's. The next section though is efficiency, which aims to measure how effectively a user implements their aura, because just having a lot of the aura is great, but if you're not using it efficiently, then it's just a complete waste. And in contrast, there are also a lot of NEN users in the series who have minuscule quantities of aura, such as Komugi, but they use what little they have wildly efficiently. So it's a pretty important category. Meanwhile, our third criteria is versatility, and through this I aim to quantify how well a NEN user can adapt their abilities to any given situation. And the ever famous example here would be Moral, who possesses the infinitely versatile Deep Purple, which will go on to serve him well in any given scenario. Meanwhile, someone like Neon Nastrad with her lovely Ghost Rider ability has almost no versatility because it's a very bizarre niche power. And our final category is mastery. The idea behind this is to measure experience, knowledge, and depth of NEN use. And examples of super solid NEN mastery would be pretty much any graduate of the Shingen Ryu School of Kung Fu, because they are taught to harness the most advanced principles of NEN. On the other hand, someone who is still in the process of learning these principles, like Seizushi, would not achieve a particularly great score. And with all of that said, there were also a couple of rare instances where NEN users were awarded bonus points for transcending certain aspects of NEN use. I'd give you an example of what that is, but that would mean spoiling the list, so just keep an eye out for it. And so we are going to hop into this beast of a list, commencing with the 20th best NEN user in Hunter x Hunter, the Ant King Meruem. And I can't help but feel like I've already caused some kind of controversy. However, I would hope by this point that we all understand that being the strongest does not automatically equal being the best, especially without criteria. Meruem is obviously perfect in aura because, well, he has more than any other character who has ever been showcased in Hunter x Hunter, but where he begins to stumble is efficiency and versatility. For all of his godly aura quantity, Meruem never really needed to push the bounds of innovation, nor did he ever need to worry about trivial concepts such as efficient use, which is very much a curse of having so much aura, I suppose. And while I cannot deny that Meruem is an incomparable genius, he does also lose a lot of value in mastery. Once again, because he never really explored NEN in any sense of depth, which just goes to show that as monstrous as Meruem was, there was still limitless room for improvement, which is pretty terrifying, and had he been alive for more than, say, 40 days, I'm sure that he probably would have topped this list. However, we can only work with what we have, and so the Ant King will need to settle for 20th. Moving on though, we find ourselves with Phaeton Porter in 19th place, trumping the Ant King by a mere half point, and that is made up for in mastery. Phaeton is of course an NEN veteran who has a much greater grasp and knowledge base of the art form. I do want to say that Phaeton also scored very highly in aura, because his core ability does have a mechanism of transmuting pain into aura, an awful lot of aura, which allows him to surpass most users in the series. It's also heavily implied that his ability is part of a series, granting great versatility, as does his Swiss Army knife usage of the common principles of NEN. All in all, Phaeton is just a solid behemoth of a NEN user, wrapped in the package of a sadistic pint-sized lad. But keeping things within the Phantom Troop for now, one member who does outrank Phaeton on this occasion would be Bernoullinov, the first huge surprise for me on this list actually. However, it does check out. And where Bernoullinov really demonstrates his superiority is with versatility and efficiency. efficiency. Bernoullinov has a series of NEN abilities that range from simple battle armor to morphing into other people or even objects, and then there's the whole thing where he conjures the planet Jupiter. The latter of which is what gives me the confidence to place his aura score so high as well. And after examining him closely, I feel like Bernoullinov is just a shockingly underrated member of the Phantom Troop. But then marching forward into number 17, we find ourselves face to face, unfortunately, with 4th Prince Ceridnik, which may seem quite at odds with the fact that canonically he's only been a NEN user for a couple of weeks at this stage. However, Ceridnik comes with a huge X factor, which is that he is a genius unlike any we've seen before. To put it into some perspective, if Gon and Killua are said to have a 1 in 10 million talent for NEN, then Ceridnik would have a 1 in a billion talent. Everything just comes to him so ridiculously easily, and if anything, he is simply loved by aura, to the point where he just subconsciously wields NEN in an efficient, versatile, and masterful manner, be it conjuring a fearsome NEN beast or developing an ability to see into the future. Like Meruem, Ceridnik is a grand exception to the general rules of NEN use. However, unlike Meruem, Ceridnik actually plans on wielding NEN to its fullest extent, which is a deeply despairful thought, so some very dark times ahead in Hunter x Hunter. In 16th place, however, we discover one Silver Zoldyck, someone who, I'll be honest, very much makes his way onto this list through clout alone. Because there were times when I was examining NEN users that I really just had to make reasonable assumptions, and with Silver those assumptions came in the areas of mastery and efficiency. There is absolutely no way that as the head of the Zoldyck household, Silver has anything less than a supreme mastery, and as a professional assassin, he will almost certainly have incredible efficiency as well. His profession just demands both of these things. Meanwhile, his aura has been on full display on one occasion, and it is big, very big. But I will say that his versatility suffers simply because we haven't seen quite enough of his abilities as of yet, and I don't have a lot to base any reasonable assumptions on, so Silver, you be here. As for someone we do have extensive knowledge on, in comes Razor at number 15. This man is pure insanity. He is often credited as being one of the most powerful and versatile through what we saw of him on Greed Island. However, when you stop to think about exactly how Greed Island even exists, then you realize that we need to give Razor even more credit. Razor's personal aura is responsible for any and all emissive effects of the cards on the island, and his aura is a large factor of what keeps this game running. And even with that allocation to the game of Greed Island, he still has enough left over to be the grand beast he is. Razor is someone who at 100% could decimate the large majority of pro hunters, and I will always find it a bit sad that he is destined to remain on Greed Island for what seems to be the rest of his days. And as for another sad story, here's Nov, a very powerful exploration of trauma in the series, but also a pretty stunning NEN user. Nov's hide-and-seek Hatsu encapsulates all 4 of these categories to a very high degree. Firstly, the fact that he, on his own, has enough aura to create an entire pocket dimension the size of a grand mansion is absurd, and it also speaks to how efficiently he can use his aura to make this even possible. And through this ability, he has a ridiculous degree of versatility and options for use, plus he is also a demonstrable master of NEN with a theoretical knowledge on par with the highest ranking hunters of the association. And to put it quite simply, Nov is a boss. A NEN boss. To number 13 now, we have the delightful Biski, who you will notice is the first character to have been awarded some elusive bonus points. And that's because Biski has gone above and beyond what should be humanly possible with NEN use by using raw desire to access an ability to change her body at will. And this may seem simple, but the key thing to remember is that this really should not be possible. Other than specialization, none of the NEN affinities allow for this phenomena to occur, especially not Biski's native transmutation. I mean, there is a potential explanation in an extreme form of enhancement, which is sort of backed up by Gon doing a similar thing with his adult form, but even if that is the case, Biski only becomes that much more impressive because she accessed a similar transformative effect without making a deadly NEN vow. Even if it was to do the reverse, it's still very impressive. So Biski well and truly deserves her points as well as her placement here today. And next up we have another teacher of Gon and Killua, being Mr. Kite, or I should probably say Miss Kite these days. But Kite is kind of like a poster boy for efficiency and versatility. The Crazy Slots ability provides Kite with a variety of tools that are capable of handling most given situations, and they are also used extremely efficiently by placing a series of restrictions upon said usage. One being that Kite is unable to select the weapon used, but even after that, some of the randomized weapons even come with restrictions of their own, thus multiplying Kite's effectiveness by the mathematical terminology of lots. Kite is quite simply one of the best, a truly enviable mind in the realm of NEN use. And in stark stark contrast now, we have Men Thuthuyupi in 11th place, someone who gets by with, let's say, less mental effort. However, when you are a royal guard, does that even matter? And the answer is, maybe. But Yupi scores a perfect 25 for aura, as will all of the royal guard, because their quantities may as well be endless. Yupi also does surprisingly well in versatility though, because he can morph himself to respond to pretty much any given situation, even grow wings. So despite the fact that he began life as a rather basic punch man style existence, he did evolve into something pretty damn great. With that said, he definitely had room to improve in efficiency though. Once again, that is the curse of boundless aura. And that's a very similar situation that we have for our 10th place finisher, Pito. In fact, Pito has the exact same stats as Yupi according to my criteria, but for a weirdly different reason. In Pito's case, they score high in versatility because they are a specialist, and were thus capable of creating probably any NEN ability that they could have dreamt of, especially with the infinite aura reservoir of Royal Guard. Like Yupi though, Pito loses points in efficiency because there was very little thought paid to that aspect. Thinking of abilities like Dr. Blythe, this was such a poorly thought out Hatsu in retrospect, and that's because Pito wasn't at all thinking of effective NEN use when crafting it. Pito was just thinking about having fun and trying to revive Kite, so naturally a far more frivolous ability was generated as a result of that. In all fairness though, Pito does still score decently because they did have some more refined instances like the Terp's Core ability, which was pretty great all around, but still Pito is yet another victim of not really being pressured to use NEN use to its most effective degree. Now in the opposite camp, we find Illumi Zoldyck in 9th place, someone who certainly doesn't rival a Royal Guard in terms of aura quantity, however a figure who outclasses them in pretty much every other area of NEN use. And everything I said about Silva, well, very much applies to Illumi as well, just to a more demonstrable degree. As a trained assassin, Illumi is automatically going to possess top tier mastery and efficiency, but where he triumphs over Silva is versatility, because for a pure manipulator, Illumi has a disgustingly wild degree of different ways to implement this incredibly basic concept. It doesn't matter what it is, anything Illumi wants to be done can be done, whether by using his abilities or by manipulating others. And quite frankly, he puts other fantastic manipulators like Shalnak to shame. And that's why Illumi is awarded with the coveted number 9. Next up though, we finally encounter one of our main protagonists of the series, Krapika, who has landed himself in 8th place. And you may immediately notice that Krapika's aura score is quite comparatively low. In fact, I think it's the lowest of this entire list. And that's because Krapika doesn't come close to rivaling anyone in terms of raw aura. But how he makes up for that is by being a master of efficiency and versatility. Krapika takes what aura he has and min-maxes the hell out of it, mostly via Emperor time, which allowed him to create and access a variety of abilities that make use of his neighboring and even weak NEN affinities. Plus, it's also hard to call the only NEN user in the series who can actively switch affinities anything less than pretty damn fantastic, which may just be the luck of the draw with the scarlet eyes, but it is still there. Krapika is a very scary blonde boy thing. Not scarier than number 7 though, where we find ourselves a familiar clown magician Hisoka. And for someone who exists for such a seemingly flippant life purpose, Hisoka has really given his all to pursuing NEN for said purpose. His aura quantity is undeniably large, but like Krapika, Hisoka's deadliest weapon comes with efficiency and versatility. Hisoka can seemingly use bungee gum to get himself out of most situations, and the simplicity of its implementation is almost mind-bogglingly awe-inspiring, especially compared to the weird complex abilities of most of his contemporaries. And without going into spoilers, Hisoka has only become a greater NEN user in every single aspect after a certain event. Mysterious. To number 6 though, we have our final Royal Guard Shiropoof, who rather surprisingly, at least to me, has managed to significantly outrank the other two. Surprising because at face value, I would almost always place Pito above Poof, mostly for the specialization aspect. However, what Poof has going in his favor that the other two simply do not is raw efficiency. Poof isn't the kind of blunt head-to-head fighter that the others are, and he actually crafts his abilities with great subtlety and control. Through stuff like the Beelzebub Hatsu, Poof has a demonstrable insight into how to dedicate these micro quantities of aura in order to achieve their greatest possible effect. And in general, he just thinks a lot more than both Pito and Yupi, whom rely more on natural instincts, and that is what has ended up pushing Poof into 6th place, whilst the others were 10th and 11th respectively. Still not quite top 5 material though, but to commence our rise to the pinnacle, I will present you with Moral in 5th place, a man with the most versatile single NEN ability we've seen in the entire series. Also someone with what should be a staggering amount of aura, only really surpassed by the true monsters of nature that Hunter x Hunter has to offer. But what has always impressed me most about Moral is just efficiency. Moral is an extremely rare individual whose primary Hatsu makes use of his most most unfriendly NEN ability being transmutation. However, through a stupidly clever system of restrictions and minor reliance on the affinity, Moral takes that and incorporates it into his strength to craft a glorious aberration of the world. And yeah, it takes someone pretty serious to surpass Moral, and I would say we only have about 4 of those. We have 4 of those in Hunter x Hunter, the first of which is Zeno Zoldyck, dragon diving himself straight into 4th place. When the words NEN Master are uttered, the first image in my head is usually of Zeno. His experience, his profession, his contacts, his abilities, everything is designed for Zeno to succeed under the criteria that I have laid out. And it's actually kind of difficult to know what to say about Zeno that isn't just like absolutely obvious from his feats in the series. His aura quantity is on a completely different level to most. He has the efficiency of a Master NEN assassin, he can adapt to any scenario, and he is one of the greatest established NEN masters in this entire world. So, yeah, I guess that's that. Well, that's that until we step into pure insanity, where we first discover Chrollo Lucifer in 3rd place. Now, he does not have the aura quantity of someone like, say, Zeno, but for a man who can acquire pretty much any other NEN ability, it would be inaccurate to give Chrollo anything less than a perfect score in versatility. What's more impressive though is that Skill Hunter is an ability that should be nigh on impossible to implement. The restrictions are absolutely ridiculous. However, Chrollo is a mind sharp enough to take the impossible and just make it work, hence the shockingly high score and efficiency. Chrollo exists on this supremely thin line, pushing the limits of NEN to their extremes, whilst of course knowing exactly when and where to compromise. And what results is this overwhelmingly marvelous NEN wielder. A description that I would also apply to our 2nd place finisher, Jing Freaks. Now, Jing is someone that I would often refuse to rank on a list like this because I previously held the opinion that we just did not have enough information regarding him. And for reference, that opinion does still apply to characters like Pariston and actually most of the Zodiacs. We just don't know anywhere near enough about them, so they did not rank very highly at all if I bothered to rank them at all. However, Jing is very different, especially with what we know in the manga. Jing is he's a completely different type of NEN user, having demonstrated an ability to copy the powers of other NEN users, which I want to emphasize is not Jing's Hatsu. The fact is that Jing is just such a great NEN user that he can immediately dissect and copy the abilities of others through technical aura wielding. And not only that, he can also use them to a far more effective degree. Plus, as someone who has been quite literally referred to as one of the top 5 best NEN users in the world, it's just not canonically feasible to deny him a place on a list like this in anything other than a top 5 spot. But of course, the person who made that claim about Jing happens to be our number 1 contender, and the person who I solidly believe is the best NEN user in the series, Isaac Netero. Although we do have a bit of another bizarre situation happening here. In terms of aura, efficiency, and mastery, Netero achieves obvious full marks. Where he does lose a huge chunk of points though is versatility, because having thoroughly explored Netero, his abilities are geared towards one aspect alone, being combat, preferably one-on-one combat, and using a giant statue for that purpose also doesn't help, especially when you need to resummon it every time you move. However, Netero is also the beneficiary of elusive bonus points, because he has transcended his natural human limits by spending years and years training and meditating in the mountains to the point where he became a legitimate superhuman. And that acquired superhumanity plays a major role in his NEN use, allowing him to really become the beacon of life that none can surpass. And while Netero would ultimately lose to the number 20th spot on this list, Meruem, that has next to nothing to do with actual NEN use. In fact, the very idea that Netero was even capable of standing up to the Ant King speaks more profoundly to his NEN mastery than any words that I could ever hope to conjure. And so, as a result, Mr. Netero will be crowned as the best NEN user in Hunter x Hunter. And if you'd like to see more fun NEN shenaniganry, then please do check out this video of the most useful NEN abilities in the series. Lots of great stuff in that, so I look forward to seeing you there.